Today, Dubai is one of the most popular cities in the world, and the number of companies in the UAE has doubled since the pandemic. And with thousands of businesses choosing to relocate here and set up shop from all around the world, you're gonna end up asking yourself questions like, what type of business license do I need? What emirate should I set up in? Should I set up in a free zone or on mainland? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of both? In this episode, we answer all of those questions and provide you with a step-by-step guide on how to set up your business successfully in the UAE. The following is a conversation with Mohammed Tariq, a UAE-based serial entrepreneur, writer, lawyer, and philanthropist. He is the founder and CEO of InZone Group and has had the privilege of helping thousands of entrepreneurs in launching, building, and scaling their businesses in the UAE. And if you enjoyed this episode, guys, if you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, it would really help me build the show and build the channel and bring more amazing guests and inspiring conversations. But that's enough for me from now. Let's get to the episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hope It Helps, and I have a very special guest with me today, Mr. Mohammed Tariq. Mohammed, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Khalid, for having me here.
Thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And for the rest of the recording, we're going to be calling him Tariq, but I had to introduce him the right way.
Absolutely. I'm known by Tariq. Yeah.
Tariq, thank you so much for your time, man, for coming on the show. So me and you got connected through Leopold, of course, who is a previous guest on the show. Shout out Leopold if you're watching this. And I know that you have your own podcast, and we actually, had a nice meeting at your office, and you took me around and told me the story behind InZone and how you built the company and, your journey and the mission with the podcast. And so in the last 2 months, I've started to look at, because my company is set up, abroad. So now I was starting to look at, options here and how to get that done. So I've been going through trying to navigate this process myself. I've had some help along the way. But I said, I'm like, man, I have so many questions. Is this the right thing to do? So what I wanted to do for today, Tariq, is to, first of all, we want to showcase, your story, how we got to this point. And I wanted to, through this podcast, give people, I'm like, if you want to set up a business here, this is the step-by-step process you need to go through. This is the questions you need to be thinking out, the considerations, and we'll touch on leadership and entrepreneurship, throughout the conversation as well. But before we get into everything, my man, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Right. Thank you, Khalid, for having me. By profession, I'm a lawyer. I was qualified as a barrister in the UK back in 2003. I practiced law. I still have a law firm. We have a law firm which is completely online, which is quite unique by UAE standards. And the first 10 years of my career, I was practicing law with other law firms, and I reached a point where I thought I should take a decision what I wanted to do with my future. So in around 2014, we decided to set up a law firm, which is known by the name of Legal Ins, and we went online, and we had a great response, and we still do. And then in 2018, we set up InZone, which is into corporate services. So we help thousands of entrepreneurs set up their businesses in the UAE. We work with all the free zones, the mainlands in the UAE, and we provide 360 business services, helping entrepreneurs set up their businesses and scale their businesses, and help them with whatever services they need to sort of continue as a going concern.
Awesome. So first of all, thanks for giving us that context, Tariq. So I wanted to start at the beginning, if you don't mind. So I know you grew up in Kamalia in Pakistan, and you were one of 10 siblings. And you said that growing up in that environment and being in such a big family, you felt invisible. And that's when you realized if you want to change your life, you can't wait for anyone. You have to take charge, make it happen yourself. So I wanted to just start. Could you take us back to those early days, in growing up in Pakistan, and how did you shatter those limiting beliefs, and who are the mentors that helped you, in that phase?
So I come from a family background which is quite humble in terms of the education part. I mean, I am the second youngest from out of the 10 siblings. My father married twice, and first wife passed away, and then the second wife, out of the four, I'm the third child from the second wife. So in terms of 10 siblings, we have six stepchildren, brothers and sisters. Now, growing up in a large family has its benefits, has its drawbacks as well. I mean, because I was number 9, I was always, the one who was kind of neglected in terms of the attention, and especially in a family which is not educated, it's very, very hard to understand how to actually have any opinions or how to express your opinions in the first place. So I struggled through school. I used to be very, very average. I used to play a lot of billiards in the streets, and that's why in the new podcast studio, I have brought in the billiards table as well. So I passed my metric. It's equal to the GCSEs, the British system, and I didn't score good enough marks to actually even get into the college of my own small city of Kamalia.
Okay.
So I struggled. Eventually, after many, many attempts, I got in, and it was at that point in time I also dropped out, and I started going with my father to my, to our, we had a poultry farm. I started off doing the poultry farm, joined my elder brother, and then something clicked, and there was a family situation event where sort of I woke up and I started going back to the college. And then I topped the same college in my graduation. Then luck would have it, one of my friends suggested that I should go to the UK. And my father had enough money at the time, and he agreed that he would send me to the UK. And then I started working on my English language. I got admission into the British Council in Lahore, started taking English courses. Of course, IELTS is one of the main courses. That is the English testing system that is required for any student who goes to the UK to take. Then I went to the UK, of course, and then I qualified as a barrister in 2003. Went back home in 2003, started with the law firm, and came to Dubai. Had an opportunity with a very large law firm here. And then I reached a point in my life where I started thinking that, I was known to be a very, very solid lawyer when it comes to the technical skills of law. But, I used to get this feedback very, very often that, I was not business oriented.
Not business oriented.
I wasn't business oriented, and I didn't have much of a chance growing into partnership in the law firm. And then I lost hopes. And then I went in-house with Dubai Holding, Dubai Properties, and then it was TCOM at the time. And then I started discovering myself. I reached a point where I thought that, there was something more to life than just doing law. And it was that point in time that, I reached a point where I decided that I could actually change myself. Yeah. I could turn the tables, and I had it in me that, I could become an entrepreneur. And that's when I started off with the law firm, and then, things started happening, and, we started building the team, and then slowly and steadily, now we've reached a point where we have over 110 people in the team.
Wow.
And we've done exceptionally well in the last few years, and we're growing. This year we're planning to have another 100 people in the team. We should be over 200 people, and we have plans to go for an IPO in about 2028 as per the business plans that we have. So we have a huge vision for the future, and that's what we're looking at.
It's very interesting how listening to your story, how when you growing up in in a family where education wasn't that maybe available, and you building yourself and working through that, getting into college, then deciding to drop out, and then going back and reaching the top of your class, which opened the door to the British Council, to going to the UK. So I remember when we met up, Tariq, and you said when you decided to do law, it was you kind of picked it like you wanted to go to the UK and you're like, okay, I guess I'll just do law. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, oh, okay, so he picked one of the hardest degrees and professions to go into, but looking how things turned out, I think it was a fantastic decision. But can you tell me about your time in the UK and how it felt on a personal level when you qualified as a lawyer? Because I think after you hitting top of the class, in that university, that was one accomplishment. But I feel like when you get a law degree in a new country, having to learn a brand new language, that must have been quite a special moment.
Yeah, just connecting dots with your observation why I did law. It was just because I didn't know anything else. Essentially, I wasn't good at maths. I wasn't good at biology or sciences or anything else. I mean, I thought this was pretty much logical, for me to opt for, because I didn't have many options, and somehow I had that feeling that I could actually turn out to be a good lawyer. Now, when I was in the UK, there were many struggles, especially. It was a huge cultural shock for me, going from a very small town in Pakistan and going to the UK, studying there. Language was a huge barrier, although I had done my IELTS and all that, but it was very basic.
Sure.
I could converse in English, but not at a very fluent level. I remember the days when I started reading the textbooks. It was so hard for me that I used to translate the English into Urdu and write down the Urdu words with the English. And I used to spend hours and hours just trying to understand the basic concepts of law. My daughter is studying law, at the same time now. She's in Durham at the moment. And when I tell her this story, I tell her that your struggles are not the same which I went through.
True.
I went through the struggles of actually learning the language while studying the law. Your struggle is a different one. You need to be at a much higher level. Thankfully, she is. I mean, she's doing exceptionally well. But I think connecting with people, they're having conversations, and then, understanding the subject was quite a challenge for me. I used to spend many hours compared with others, in my class. For example, any average student, if he or she was spending about 2 hours, I'd spend 6 hours instead, trying to get hold of the same concept.
Yeah.
And in seminars and in presentations, I used to be extremely shy, to the extent that I used to skip those.
Really?
Because I had the fear of speaking in front of people.
I could never imagine you as a shy person, by the way, knowing you.
So it was very, very challenging. And thankfully, I came out of it. And one thing I learned out of this exercise was that, it gave me something which many others now miss. It gave me an element of, starting something and then just going with it, never giving up, persevering. You know, when I see a lot of other entrepreneurs or people across the table, when I meet other people, I see that element that I sort of, adopted or, got used to is not something, that is commonly held or have, not something that is commonly available with other people.
Sure.
When I start something now, for example, any eating habits or exercise habits, once I adopt those things, they just continue with me as a routine.
Yeah. Where does that mindset come from? Because that experience that you just shared with us about university and the challenges and not only law and learning the language and being shy and the culture shock, that's a lot to go through at once, especially for someone, at that, when you're younger, at that age, you don't have the maturity or the awareness about yourself or the world to deal with something that significant. So how does, I guess, your environment growing up build that mindset in you? Was it from the sense that I've seen how difficult life can be and I want to take charge myself and work as hard as I can so I don't, we don't have to go back to that?
Yeah, so growing up with 10 siblings where I didn't have any opinions and there was not much education in the family to teach me how to have an opinion was a huge setback for myself. I mean, when I went to the UK, the reason I said that I used to skip seminars or presentations was that, I couldn't articulate myself.
Okay.
Right? And I didn't have that confidence. And that actually continued with me. That stigma continued with me until very late in my profession as well. It's only that until recently that I came over, and I decided that I just need to be shameless now.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy.
It's not easy. It's a stigma in your head.
Absolutely.
And I had to struggle a lot to overcome this stigma. Now, coming back to your question, the reason that I wanted to do well was to prove a point that I've come a long way, and it's not just being in the UK. It's just something that I got an opportunity and I need to make the most of it.
Absolutely.
So that's why I continue to work hard and really do well, much better than many other students. Actually, my scores were much more, I think I landed in the top 5.
Wow, mashallah.
In the university when I qualified as a lawyer there. So it's something it has helped me significantly.
Absolutely.
In my career. And now what I'm doing is I'm just continuing with that habit.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's nothing much I have to do other than just continuing what I learned, what I learned a number of years back, actually.
So it's interesting that you said that one of the driving factors behind it was you wanted to prove a point that if you work hard, you get an opportunity, it's up to you to make what you can of it. And it's so looking at how your career has transitioned from being a lawyer to then an entrepreneur and growing the business and so on. That thread is a very common theme across. And I know, for example, with your show and with the podcast, that's something that you're trying to give back.
Yeah.
So before we start diving into podcasts, the podcasting aspect and the entrepreneurial side, now you mentioned your daughter now is studying law. So I had a question. I'm like, what advice would you have to young people that are looking to enter the field of law now, since you graduated as a lawyer and you have all that experience? So my younger sister, she's studying law as well in the UK. But what do you wish someone told you about law before you started that you think would have helped you a lot in your career?
Well, I mean, for a lawyer, you need to be thinking on your feet. That's the most important skill that you need to have. I think learning to analyze things, reading outside your discipline is very, very important for a lawyer, because you're dealing with clients and you're dealing with many, many problems that you're trying to solve. Problem solving requires you to actually think out of the box at many, many levels. So I think reading outside your subject is very important.
And when you say reading outside your subject, is that books about business or just
absolutely.
broadening your knowledge? Okay.
Whatever you like, you should read about the stuff that you really like.
Yeah.
First of all, find out what you like.
yeah, that's step one.
I never read a book until the age of 34, by the way, I often say. But when I started reading, I changed my profession. Not exactly changed, but I turned myself into an entrepreneur.
Sure.
So if I had learned that earlier, if I had read books earlier, maybe I could have done, things earlier. I could have become an entrepreneur much earlier. I think reading is one thing. Exploration is another thing. Explore yourself. Try and understand yourself. Try and self-discover yourself. Law is just a discipline, but, you need to look at the life as a whole, right? You are a professional. People will come to you for advice, and you need to connect the dots there.
Yeah.
That's very important.
So I resonate with you, especially on the reading part, because I went through, when I was very young, I think my older cousin told me, reading is not cool. So for, I think, 20 years, I never read a book. And then, like you said, once I started to read, that opened, the door to everything. All the books that you see here have all been, read. So it really broadens your horizons. I tell my, my younger sister, I wish, kind of like what you said, I read before, because, wow, if I had those insights back then, what could I have done? But as they say, everything happens for a reason, so it's okay. So, Tariq, you moved to Dubai in 2007. You start working for a large law firm here, and then you work with DIC, and then you, at 2014, decide to open your own law firm, Legal Ins. And then a couple of years later, you switched to InZone. And then now you offer 360 business services. And then you launched the podcast. And I remember when we were at your office, the next thing was real estate. So my question to you is, what drives you to keep going and expanding and entering all these, different fields?
Well, the drive is, the passion to do things that, to reach my potential, essentially, as a human being. And I think there's a lot in me that I can, offer to people. And there's a lot that needs to be discovered still. And I keep on learning about myself. And I keep on doing things, For example, the podcast is very much linked to my mission of educating people, and that is linked to my background. So when I talk about my background, which I've relayed to you earlier, I come from a family which didn't have any education, and I've had to struggle through life in a certain way to reach a point where I've reached now. When I started the business, I had written down in my diary that I'd be setting up an institution for vocational training for people back home in my city, where I should be able to train those people, very, very poor people, and give them some funding to start their small setups, which I'm looking into now. I have a foundation in parallel. I have the funding from my own business. And while I'm looking for people who can actually start this institution, I thought that I could start educating people at a larger scale. And podcast is an avenue for me to actually bring in other guests, share the expertise, have conversations, and share the knowledge with people and try and inspire people to change themselves, to improve themselves as human beings and as professionals. My story is the story of transformation. And there are many, many people who can actually transform their lives through content, through, hearing or listening or watching other people. So podcast is one of the things that I'm doing at the moment. There are other avenues, of course, that I'm looking to explore, to contribute, to give back, basically.
No, for sure. From our first conversation, Tariq, one of the things that, was very clear to me is how much you value people and how much you care to empower people. And like you said, you struggled you went through a lot of difficult things to get to this point. So you are trying to now make it easier. So through the podcast, through the work you're doing, through the foundation. So I want to help you so it doesn't have to be, as hard for you. But with each stage from graduating law, then becoming a lawyer, then opening up your own firm, and then InZone and the podcast. So each stage requires, I think, a certain amount of courage. And you've discussed, the importance of courage in your journey. So if I came to you, Tariq, and I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur, but like I'm really scared. What advice would you have to me? How can I be more courageous?
Well, I think discover yourself. So courage is very much connected with your values, with your mission, vision, in my view. Your vision would determine the level of your courage.
Interesting. Could you, elaborate on that?
Right. If your vision is to create something and you're really invested in it and you've discovered yourself that this is your calling in your life, you'll automatically have courage. And if you're doing something which is a sham, which is just a superficial exercise, of course you'll lack courage. So if you've discovered yourself, right, I think you will have a lot of courage to start with. Of course, you might have challenges, you might have doubts, that is common with many, many entrepreneurs and professionals as well. But the very source of courage, in my view, is the vision of the person.
The vision of the person.
Yeah.
I've never heard someone put it in that term before, that the level of your vision, or maybe the clarity of your vision, will dictate the courage that you have. Because like you said, in business, as an entrepreneur, even with that, you're still going to have good moments. You're still going to have bad moments, which is perfectly normal, So
absolutely.
I always like to bring, when we have these conversations with my guests, to talk about the positives and how to do these things, but also bring the reality of, it's not just, do this and, you're good. That's it. Everything's fixed.
Yeah.
So coming on to now InZone. So I know you guys support clients looking to set up in the UAE. You provide 360 business services. Now, when setting up a business, as I mentioned, I was, going through that process. There are lots of things you need to consider, like the business activity, where to open mainland or free zone, which emirate, the banking aspect, selecting the right license. So it can be quite overwhelming, which is why you guys do what you do. So I want this to be like a case study. Yeah. I'm Khalid. Hi, Tariq. How are you? I am here because I would like to open a business in the UAE. First, could you walk me through what are the questions you would be asking me to start directing me on this is what I need to do, and then walking us through the process? So let's, like a role play.
Yeah, just very basic questions. Of course, I want to understand your activity. What is the business activity that you'll be undertaking? Because that will determine the place where you would want to set up. There would be many, many options. And the first question would be the activity. What is the business activity that you're looking to do, for example?
So let's say the business activity is a consulting/media production company.
Right. Okay. Now we're clear about the activity. Now, if you look at the places to set up businesses in the UAE, there are, of course, from your own research that there are specialized free zones and there are non-specialized free zones, and there is mainland. And, offshore is another story, but that's not relevant, of course. So if you look at the specialized free zones, if you are at a level where your media production company is at a very, very decent scale, you might want to look at the Media City, for example, which is a specialized free zone. And if you are at a startup level, you might want to consider having very, very small cost exposure. You want the cheapest option, then you could probably look at a general free zone. There are many, many free zones out there within Dubai who are offering the media activities, and you could probably look at Northern Emirates as well if you're really constrained or your cost is a concern for you. You could look at mainland as well if you're looking to have a proper office space. It depends upon the number of visas you're looking for example. Free zones will give you visas as well. Mainland will give you visas. There will be, pros and cons in certain areas.
Of course, yeah. So I want to touch on this part specifically. So, okay, let's say we've outlined the activity. So what I learned in my process is once you set up for a certain activity, if let's say down the line my business model changes, I need new activities I need to have under the license. It seems to me, I could be wrong, by the way, you're the expert, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. There wasn't much flexibility in what I could do. I would have to kind of almost close down this license and then open under a brand new license. Is that correct?
Right. So there are groupings of activities, for example, and there are restrictions around activities. Of course, if you are running a media company, it would be incorrect for you to do trading with a media activity,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be selling rice with producing podcasts, for example. So those are completely different activities. You could potentially club similar activities. The free zones have their own restrictions in terms of clubbing the activities, and mainland has its own restrictions. There are activity groups, they call them. So you can club the activities within the same groups. Usually, podcasts, for example, could be relevant to something, maybe videography. I don't know, I will need to check.
Yeah.
But, something very, very similar and identical can be brought in under the same umbrella. But if you're looking for something completely different, then you'll have to set up a different license, because there would be regulations around that specific activity as well. Some activities might be regulated by the government. There might be extra qualifications required for you to actually even have a license. There might be regulation from the government. There might be checks from the government, on a regular basis. So it all depends.
Yeah. And on the business activity side, so even when I was going through that process, it was a bit challenging because I looked at free zones, I looked at mainland, the restrictions, the benefits and so on. Yeah. The challenge was, it seemed that we found like a group, let's say a class that I'm like, okay, this covers, a lot of things. But there was like other areas that I'm like, but that doesn't fall under this. So then we looked at, free zones because that's where you can have more flexibility in the types of different groupings of activities you can have under the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that step is significantly challenging unless you have someone like you guys who understand this is how it needs to be done, because you don't want to start doing this and then invest, pay the money, get the license, only to realize, oh, this is completely wrong.
Of course. Now this is where we as InZone we stand out from the market. Our very foundations are legal.
Yeah, that's the basis.
Firm as well, of course, as a sister concern. But there's no other CSP in the UAE which has that backing of a law firm, in terms of advising the clients on merit about their legal foundations. And I often say that 95% of the businesses actually fail within the first 5 years. And the reasons are many, starting from the lack of understanding their own product. For example, they may be struggling to build a team. There may be problems with the leadership skills. There may be problems with marketing, sales, building systems, product development. One of the key elements where the business could potentially fail is the legal foundation. You need to understand what your plans are in the next 5 years. For example, if you outgrow the free zone, for instance, you need to be able to actually grow into the mainland area, for example. You might want to consider mainland to start with.
Yeah.
So, setting up a business is easy. It's just paperwork. But having the legal foundation right is the key element to the success of any business. And if you get it wrong, you might have to liquidate your company and then set up a company from scratch again.
Yeah,
that is doubling down on your costs, then spending a lot of money on other areas, maybe canceling the visas. I've had a recent case where someone struggled with an activity and they are in the process of liquidating the company. They have got several visas under that company, and now they're going to have to spend another set of expense on a new license, and the history goes away of the company.
Oh, really?
The banking history goes away, of course.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, because that will affect, because let's say I grew the activity and now I want to reopen. Same thing, but like now I'm gonna go mainland.
Yeah.
But all that history is so valuable to the setup of this business. So those two are not they can't be linked.
Right. I mean, if you reach a point where you have to liquidate, the history goes away. In some cases, in very limited cases, you might be able to migrate the company. But there are very limited options within the UAE. I mean, some free zones do allow that. Yeah. But that's not a norm.
Yeah, and that's when we were having the discussions. That's what I was told, because I'm like, oh, let's start here and then we'll move there, and they're like, no. If you do that, you're gonna probably have to open either twice or close that one down at some point. Yeah. So we've talked about the business activity. We're clear on that and the importance of the legal foundation, not just to set you up now, but to protect you for where you see the vision of the company over the next couple of years. So now we enter the mainland free zone debate. Now, I know free zones, maybe you have more flexibility, you don't need to have maybe an office space, like all these kind of things. And then mainland comes with, its own advantages and disadvantages. So I know it's going to be very contextual and business dependent, so I understand this is not easy to answer. But could you give me, what are the advantages of mainland versus the advantages of free zone? Just as what they offer, and then taking the context out of it, because that's going to be important in every case.
So the main advantage of a free zone used to be the 100% ownership.
100% ownership.
Yes.
Okay.
So as an expatriate, I mean, you could have the company owned by you 100%. That wasn't the case on mainland. That's not the case anymore now. I mean, both jurisdictions, you can own your company 100%, and you can repatriate the profits as well. When it comes to the free zones, they still offer very, very niche advantages. For example, if you are looking at Dubai Media City, if your company grows up, you could potentially set up an office in the Media City, and that puts you amongst the elite. And it's an address to have, right? It's an address that you can portray, and the clients will trust you more, right? Instead of having that mainland.
Yeah.
And for startups, for example, many free zones offer, platforms where people collaborate, right? They have startup hubs as well.
Yeah.
Where
true.
some of the startups could potentially have funding as well. So there's a community that is being built. There's some education that the free zones are bringing forth. Their processes are generally more streamlined in my view, but of course DED has done phenomenal in the last few years. They're much easier going as well. But the free zones, entire visa processes and everything is completely online these days. So a lot of people feel comfortable doing that, and they can do it from anywhere around the world. That is an advantage as well. General, community building is there, of course. You can have a small office space from the free zone. You don't have to look around in Business Bay, for example, or in other areas where you might be struggling to find real estate. The free zone offers you ready-made office, for example, a fully serviced office, which is not there in mainland. So those are the key areas where, and tax advantages, for example. There are certain free zones which are designated as tax-free, for example. You could potentially save VAT as well. Corporate tax, you might have to still register, but you could potentially save corporate tax if you meet the criteria, right? And then for the trading part, which is not relevant to you, you could, if you're trading within the free zone or you're re-exporting, then you're potentially paying zero customs duty. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're bringing the products mainland, then you'll have to pay that customs duty, and then you'll have to have a mainland company.
So it's interesting listening to that explanation. So it's almost like with free zones, there's a lot of variety and flexibility. Free zones are kind of like the new age, and mainland's like the old school guys that old certain processes, fixed long term. That's how I see it. Like new tech versus old tech.
Yeah.
What's interesting, and this came up when we were having that discussion, was the brand aspect. Because I was told that like you having, let's say my company is set up in Ras Al Khaimah, for example, and then you have a company that's set up, it's in Dubai. That I would never have thought that the location of where my business is set up would come with an extra level of maybe prestige or credibility to the brand. So from your experience, how significant is that difference, or is it just like it's like a nice little bonus, or does it actually come with a certain weight?
The answer is very simple here.
Okay, please.
Do you want to live in Dubai or Ras Al Khaimah? The same way, if you tell people that you have a company in Dubai, compared with Ras Al Khaimah, it'll make a difference.
Sure.
The branding does make a big difference. I mean, maybe for some people who are, who have lower budgets, for example, to start up a business, they might be better off setting up in Ras Al Khaimah or maybe some other northern Emirates. But the point here is that if you have serious clientele, then it makes a lot of sense to set up a business in Dubai.
Okay. That was such a great example because it really resonated in my head and made it clear. I kind of understand what you're saying now. So, okay, so we've talked about the free zones. We've talked about mainland. Now, I'm curious in your experience, because I would imagine, let's say I open a business. The ultimate goal is mainland. But let's say right now financially it doesn't make sense. I need that flexibility, so I'll start in a free zone. I expect the transition would be start free zone, eventually move to mainland. Do you see cases where you start mainland and then go to free zone, or is it rare?
In our own example, we are set up in Ras Al Khaimah, for example, for legal services. When it came to setting up InZone, we had to do mainland because of the logistical, practical reasons, of course. Similarly, I mean, it all depends upon your activities. I mean, you should look at 5-year model, for example, and see where you are headed in terms of your own vision as a company, and then take a call from there. I mean, you don't want to be losing the banking history, and move all the visas. Maybe you want to have a setup now and try it out. It may or may not work.
Sure.
If you want to just try it out, then maybe after a year, move to mainland.
Yeah. But like it sounds like it is still very contextual, because there might be examples that even if I do start mainland, it for the activity, for the new vision direction of the business, it makes more sense to shift into that. So it's not either or, it just depends.
It depends upon your own business plan and the vision that you have for your own business.
Yeah. So that was very useful to hear, because for I think a lot of people who want to set up businesses, these are the questions or the insights that we need to know, the things we need to, consider. Obviously, the banking aspect is one that, I know you touched on in a podcast I watched. But according to what you said, correct me if I'm wrong, once the business activity is clear, the banking is more of a formality, or are there certain considerations I should think about also from a banking perspective for my business?
Yeah, media is not a high risk activity. If you have an activity like trading or general trading, banks are very careful with their KYC processes, and they do have very rigorous KYC regime for certain activities which are either classified as high risk or medium risk. But media is not a high risk or medium risk activity. If you set up in Dubai, it'll be very easy for you to set up a bank account.
Yeah,
bank accounts are not easy for companies with high risk activities, and if they happen to be in other Emirates, for example, it becomes very problematic, and that's where people need to really think hard. Setting up in the right place, so that they have the bank account ASAP. Yeah. And without a bank account, business is just a piece of paper.
Very true.
You've spent money to get that paper, but you can't have the business. You can't have the money coming in.
Very, very true. Yeah. So we've understood. So we've gone through that, what the whole process looks like. What I've learned from our conversation so far, Tariq, is that the process is simple, but you need to do a lot of work beforehand to make that process simple, because you need to have clarity on the activity, on where, mainland, free zone, bank, all of that, and having, as you said, the legal foundation, underwriting, all of that, in place before you go down this process.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people that was incredibly helpful, because now they know, like, all right, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to consider. Yeah. Now, in your industry, as you know, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I wonder how this affects Tariq's business, because as you know, the UAE is a very progressive country. There's laws changing constantly from year to year, time to time. So new regulations, new rules, and all for the betterment of the country. But I can imagine with a business like yours that you're helping other companies set up. When that law changes, not only does that affect how you have to run your business, and maybe you need to make changes, how does that then translate into how help the clients change and whatever? Do you see it as how do you manage that challenge of the pace of how much things are changing?
Laws haven't changed to the detriment of businesses in the UAE. If UAE has taken steps, they have been to progress businesses, to help them expand or help them set up quicker. Anything that has happened in the last 10 years or so, even the changes in the company's law, which actually made it possible for people to set up mainland with 100% ownership, that was a positive change. So we've seen many, many positive changes, and it doesn't harm any business. If anything, it creates more opportunities, and we keep ourselves educated on the day-to-day changes that the government brings in, and then we sort of implement those in our systems and educate our clients through various means.
Yeah. So from your perspective, it hasn't been been a challenge or slowed things down. If anything, it's just, but it's something that you have to. It's
Correct.
A new thing that you have to do. Basically.
Correct. The usual changes that you often see are the visa-related changes. There are many opportunities that are created, for example, for golden visa,
of course,
for example, and many other types of visas that are being introduced over time. So we need to be learning the processes, and then we just try and make sure that everything is streamlined for our clients.
Exactly.
In a timely manner.
Yeah. So I know in your industry, Tariq, because I see this all over the place. Whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on LinkedIn, there's a lot of competition in this space. Yeah. There's so many people that offer business setups and so on. So you said earlier that one of the competitive advantages you have is that you guys have the basis has always been a legal foundation.
Yeah.
So as time has gone on and more people are entering, the space, how do you continue to set yourself apart and stay above the competition?
You just described that. The legal foundations sets us apart.
That's the key thing.
On top of that, the way we conduct our business is completely different from the small players, of course. I mean, currently, I'm not sure about the numbers, but there are thousands. There are thousands and thousands of corporate services providers in the UAE. You go to a typing center, they set up a company. You go to a freelancer, they'd be happy to set up a company. They might have taken a license of a CSP. You go to any auditing firm, they'll set up a company. You go to any law firm, they'll set up a company for you. But providing a value to your clients, solving their problems and giving them the foundation that they need is the absolute key here. And this is where we've excelled as a team. And I think that continues to be our focus. Client service remains at the center of our attention. We ensure that we give our clients what we promise and we over-deliver.
Yeah.
And we give them 360 services, and we create an ecosystem where if they come to us, they get almost everything that they need to sort of start their business and scale it.
Yeah.
Now the way we're developing it for the future is to bring in the element of education.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right? Through the podcast and through other content creation that I'm personally involved in. So we set up a business for our clients, and we know how these businesses can scale. And our promise is, for the podcast, we were bringing in a lot of change in our branding as well, without disclosing too much.
Yeah.
We want to
stay tuned.
We want to help our clients achieve 10x results in their lives and businesses.
Yeah.
That is our mission.
Yeah.
And we're doing that by providing them services and by giving them the tools that will make it happen for them. That'll help them learn at that level so that they can actually achieve 10x growth.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that the entrepreneurs have is that, let me put it in another way. The biggest enemy of an entrepreneur is the entrepreneur himself.
100%. 100%.
Why I say that is that when people leave their jobs, they happen to be finding another job by setting up a company, but not learning anything. They are doing everything on their own. And then after some time, they'll get fed up, and then they leave. They go back to their job. What people are failing to do, what entrepreneurs are failing to do, is they're failing to learn. This is where we chip in now. We're not only educating, we're giving them a direction to not only start a business, but make it 10x.
Yeah. So you're not only now giving them the what, I'm giving you the how as well.
Yes.
And I think what you said, one thing that really differentiates you guys is the 360 services, because I don't want, as you touched on it perfectly, as an entrepreneur, like, I need to know how to do sales, marketing, website design, like setting up the business, like all these different things. So having one place that I can have access to this, and I like the term you use as an ecosystem of, you come here and you have access to all the functional things that you might need for the business. But I like that you're now adding the education piece, because that's the missing, I guess, the gap for scale.
Absolutely.
I have the services, but now this knowledge with this creates a very, very attractive
And we're
offer.
looking to set up a community of entrepreneurs now under this umbrella, where, we'll have thousands and thousands of clients coming under one umbrella, and we'll bring in, for example, the guests on my podcast will come as experts.
Yeah.
Right? So they can provide their services. They can educate the clients under this umbrella. It's a club that we're looking to form now.
Yeah.
Which is going to provide a platform to our clients to collaborate with other businesses, to expand into new businesses, for example, and to do a lot better what they would have thought before they entered our doors.
Yeah.
To seek our services.
Yeah. You have one thing I really appreciate about you is when you speak about your vision, it's like I see it in your eyes, it's like crystal clear, like you see it, and I'm like, damn, how is it so clear? Because obviously, but I know you went through a lot to be able to have such clarity of vision through all those journeys and the processes you've had. So no, I really respect it. So you've talked about. I wanted to round off our conversation, Tariq, touching on leadership. So what you said in the podcast that I watched, which I thought was very interesting, was you want to be you define an entrepreneur as someone who starts a business, but you define a leader as someone who allows others or enables others to become leaders themselves. So I want to ask you, through your journey, there's many different times, and to get to where you've gotten to now, you have to lead, right? When was the first time, maybe you were aware or unaware of it, that you felt or you realized, oh, I'm a leader now?
Yeah, it took me a long time. Honestly, took me a long time. In the first 10 years of my career, until I had set up the law firm, I had no one reporting to me.
It's just you.
And the moment I set up the business, I had people reporting to me, and I struggled big time. And I used to be a very tough person to work with, extremely tough, to the extent that, I was so rude that people would even refuse working with me.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But I learned my lessons. I used to think, look at life in a different way, with a different lens. But it was with the business, the vision for the business that actually made me a better leader. I never learned leadership from textbooks, for example. I learned it on the go by working with people. And I've come to realize that, the biggest job of a leader is to create another leader and a bunch of leaders. And their jobs must be to create further leaders down the line.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to grow a business.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, your business is just a one-man show. And that can only last for a certain time. You're not creating an institution. What we are doing is that we are creating an institution which is going to last for decades.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that you said it took you a long time, to learn these things, and you touched on how in order to have a legacy or longevity, like I love the word you use, an institution, you need to have almost like a conveyor belt of production of leaders, from the people you lead and so on, and it trickles down throughout the whole organization. One thing that you said was what makes the most effective leaders is their degree of selflessness.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people want to become leaders, but I want the title of a leader or to be perceived as a leader, but I don't want the responsibility that comes with being a leader. Because to lead is not just to empower, but at the end of the day, if things go wrong, you are the responsible person. You are the one who has the responsibility of leading everyone else. So that's a heavy weight to hold. So how did you learn? You said, through your experience, you learned that to look at life through a different lens, and now you're a completely different leader than you were, back then. How did you train yourself to become more selfless and to deal with, as you grew the company and were entering these new stages and more people were coming in and, reporting to you, to, what I'm saying, to bear the weight of that responsibility? Because there's different stages, I'm sure.
Right. So I think that's a great question. Any person who's working towards a cause would be selfless, in my view. If you're working to make money, that is a very selfish cause. If you're working to build something that is associated with your persona, that is very selfish. We are working for a cause. And working for a cause comes after a lot of self-study, self-introspection, self-discovery. I am on a mission in my life. I'm trying to create things which will help people, which will help many, many people across the borders. And that is the mission that we're on. Through InZone, we're creating success stories, for example, for our clients, for our own people to start with. We are creating success stories for our own people. For example, in the last review session, end of year reviews, we have promoted 24 people within the organization.
Wow, mashallah. That's awesome.
We've created a very clear path for them into the future, into the coming years, for them to shine as professionals. And that they're all going to help with this cause. The cause is to help the entrepreneurs, to help our own people, to help the society through education. And that is the cause that is helping me become selfless as well. I hope I am selfless. Any person who is working on a mission or a cause would definitely be selfless. And that would be the highest form of leadership in my view. And then they can focus on that and help others grow.
Yeah.
And people that they are growing, they will be part of this cause. And those people will help others grow as well.
Yeah.
And there's a chain.
Yeah. And I think what you talked about, Tariq, of the cause, having a cause, changes the lens of how you will approach, your business or whatever you're trying to create or build, because it becomes bigger than the financial gain
Absolutely.
of what I'm trying to, not to say it's important, but like you've said in the past as well on, the podcast, it's not just about the numbers, it's about how many people's lives can I affect in a positive way? How many
Absolutely.
lives can I touch?
Absolutely.
I'm curious. So I know we touched on the foundation, that you're building earlier, and you talked about the education aspect, and you're trying to build a community of entrepreneurs. When you give back, I think living a life of service is something that is the most fulfilling thing, path to take. No matter how much money you make, the feeling when you have helped someone and they say, even if they don't say thank you, but you've helped them in whatever capacity you have, is a very positive, is a very fulfilling and, good feeling to be putting out into the world. Where, I guess for you, where did that come from? Because you went through a lot yourself. So it would be, because someone who has your story, Tariq, could have gone two ways. You could have gone the way that you've gone, which is, the selfless, giving back, caring, wanting to help others way. And there's the way that, I made it and that's all that matters now because it was so hard to make it and that's it. It's all about me and, I'm here now and that's it.
Yeah, where it came from, of course, anyone who starts a career would look for money, for example, as a starting point. I've been, of course, studying myself over the last number of years, and this creation of the institution and the foundation was a part and parcel of the business thought process. And maybe I've reached a point in my life where money is not relevant for me. I don't look at money to buy things. Maybe I've bought a car last year, or maybe a couple of watches. Other than that, I haven't changed much in my lifestyle, for example. I don't really care. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm content.
Yeah.
So that's where the key is that, now I'm looking at bigger purposes.
Yeah.
To transform things, to make things happen at a much bigger scale. Money is not a problem.
Yeah.
At all. Maybe 10 years ago, money was a problem, but not now. Thankfully, alhamdulillah, I can say
Alhamdulillah.
that. I think, of course, time is very limited. We're all going to go. And I don't want to be looking back when the time has come and think that I was busy making money.
Yeah. Fair. Very, very fair. Yeah. And like you said, I think even if like a cause is important and, and not to discount that, but there are realities of, you had to go through a certain phase, reach a certain point to have not only the financial resources and peace of mind to now enter into, deliver more focus into this, but to think now bigger, all right, it's almost like phase one or check mark, level one complete. Now let's work on level two and so on. Tariq, I just want to ask, I have two more questions for you. These are questions I ask all my guests.
Sure.
So looking back at your life, either personally or professionally, when I ask you the question, What are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
Transformation and the consistency I bring to the table.
Transformation and the consistency you bring.
Yeah.
And I've seen, and it's funny you say that because I've seen obviously I've been following you on Instagram, so I've seen the daily gym thing that I'm like, man, and I've been like, I fell off the wagon now the last like month, and I'm looking every morning, I'm like, man, how's this Tariq just in the gym, man, all the time, like respect. Yeah. And for my last question, Tariq, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
The message would be to continue with the journey and try and self-discover yourself. Try and understand yourself as a human being. Try and look at the objectives of your life with more clarity. And it'll help you create a better future for yourself.
I don't think there's a better way to end the podcast than like that, man. Tariq, I wanted to say thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. From when we first met, I'm like, I have to have Tariq on the show. There's so many things I wanted to talk about. I, on a personal level, have learned a lot from you today, especially when it comes to setting up a business, the things to consider when doing law. And your story is just very motivational and inspirational to come from, there to where you are now, mashallah. And I have no doubt that this is just the beginning of a brand new phase, and with the podcasts and everything. So just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Khalid. It's been a pleasure. And of course, you've done a phenomenal job in the last number of years. I mean, you've done more than 100 episodes, and that's something that is amazing, something to be really, really proud of, and something of a benchmark for our podcast as well. We need to be crossing hundreds and hundreds of them.
Well, I'm right here to help you, to be a supporter and help you along the way, my man.
You've helped significantly in our conversations, of course.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Guys, to everyone listening, please make sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps pod on all channels. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you, Zach. It was an absolute pleasure, my man.
Likewise. Great questions. Very thoughtful. You've done a lot of research on me.
And that's another episode in the bag, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. The goal of this podcast is to provide, as I like to call it, education on demand. We cover a wide range of topics, and the goal is to provide you with the knowledge, the tools, and the insights to improve your lives both personally and professionally. And if you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying the content, if you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, would really help me build the show and build the channel, and that's all I ask. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, bigger guests, and as always, guys, hope it helps.